All right, hello everybody. This is Mike Brown's Module 2 discussion post for ACTE 635. So before I get to the discussion, I want to tell you a little bit more about me. As far as professionally, I am an 8th grade science teacher over at Manor Middle School. My curriculum is mainly focused around chemistry and physics, with about 3/4 of the year being dedicated to chemistry and the last being physics. We do have a peppering of other random things in, like rocks for an earth science unit, and that is mainly to cover what's needed for the PSSA testing. This is my 13th year at Penn Manor School District, and I can say that I've been in the same classroom for all 13 years, which is pretty awesome, and not every teacher is able to say that. And I've loved it. It's been great. I did do my undergrad at Millersville, and now I'm working through my grad degree for Millersville. So I didn't get very as far as geographically. But I really enjoy the Lancaster area, so this is where I stayed. I'm also a co-advisor for the yearbook. I handle the creation of the book, the artistic aspect, and then my buddy, who's a social studies teacher with me, handles the business aspect. So we're a pretty good team for that. Personally, I am married. My wife, her name is Amber, is a PA, or a physician assistant at LGH for the general surgery team. She was recently at Reading Hospital, and now she's moved down here to Lancaster General for a closer commute and better offerings. So we're really happy about that. The whole COVID-19 pandemic has thrown a monkey wrench into the how safe we feel about this position, but it is what it is, and she's helping people every day, and that's what she loves to do. My kiddos there are on the right-hand side. So I have 6-year-old twins. Morgan's my daughter, and Nolan is my son. And you can see in the picture, I guess they wanted to go pick flowers that day. As far as my personal interests, I'm really into painting, fishing, hiking, so outdoor activities. I like video games, tabletop games. I do a lot of miniature games as well. And reading. I am a big nerd. Kind of comes with the territory being a science teacher, so I fit the mold pretty well. On to the discussion portion. Looking at the role shifts, I kind of broke it into 2 slides. I have a ready slide and a maybe not so ready slide. So the first section here, the fixed groupings to more dynamic groupings. I think the science classroom and the content allows you as a teacher to get more dynamic groupings just by looking at the content, and therefore there's kind of an inbuilt way to group students in labs. So by doing exit tickets as well as informal questioning, I'm able to track kind of where the students are. I don't do this every day, but probably on a weekly or every other week basis, I can kind of look at where the students are and shift around who they're working with to hopefully get better results. And this way, the students that are struggling can get some assistance from the students that are doing really well, and I can kind of offset my role as the the one in charge and allow the students to take a little bit of that ownership. For content to content skills and mindsets, I really do like to focus on this in my class, that learning the content for the test is not the end mission here, but how could we apply what we're learning to real life scenarios. I like to help establish a positive mindset for the students towards their education, and really looking at science as the fact that it's just one big experiment. Nobody, the students, me as their teacher, people way smarter than me, we will never fully understand how this universe works. And I think that if you kind of go into science with that mindset, that you're part of the experiment, you get a lot more out of it. And I try to convey that to my students. The last one, role shift, would be the explainer to intervener. I've been trying to do this more recently in my class, allowing my students to fail instead of them coming up to me and saying, "Hey, I don't get this, explain it to me." I kind of let them flounder a little bit. I think students need to understand that just because you fail does not mean that you didn't learn something, and you need to kind of see that that's part of the educational process. I think we put a lot of emphasis on getting straight A's in classes, but in the grand scheme of things, you learn sometimes even more from failing, from your mistakes. So I think I've kind of shifted that over, and I give myself a pretty good assessment for those three. The ones I'm not so ready for, the lecture to facilitator, I'm working on this. I have some student-led activities and labs, but lecture is still the way I deliver most of my information in class. It's one of the reasons that I'm working on this degree, in how, with this blended style classroom, how I can kind of disseminate the knowledge in a way that I can target the students more individually, where instead of blasting them from the lecture podium and hoping they pick up something. Now, because of my current setup, being in a face-to-face classroom, this works. And then I have kind of the next few days after a lecture is remediation, where I kind of pick up the pieces and see where the students are at. The second one is the generalist to specialist. I think this is really hard for the current state of education, to reorder everything. We as teachers wear many hats. I know that I'm the content supplier, but as well, I'm the IT support for my kids. I am sometimes the guidance counselor when our guidance counselor can't get to them. So there's a lot of pieces that go into our classrooms, and I think boiling us down to a specialist is kind of hard. Even those individuals that have a specialty, like a passion for a specialty, like let's say they really like writing curriculum, that's great, but it doesn't always translate over for everybody in the building or the department or how it works. So I think this is kind of something hard to wrap your head around. And I really do think it would take a whole reordering of the school system. I know even in my department we have some struggles with this, so it's just something that I'm not quite ready to take on. Looking at the competencies, mindsets, and qualities, one of the ones for the self-assessment was the mindfulness. So shifting from a more teacher-led classroom to a student-led one, I really think it's important to allow students to develop an understanding material, instead of just having me kind of speak it at them and hopefully it sticks. And that kind of allowing the students to have some skin in the game and making sure that they are a part of their educational upbringing. And this is something I think I do pretty well. I would say I'm kind of in the middle for this, as far as self-assessment. It's something that I'm constantly working on in getting the students more involved. For collaboration, this one I think I give myself pretty high marks on. I really like to learn from others in my field, and how they teach. I like to observe other teachers. I don't necessarily like to be observed, but I do like to observe other teachers, and do that in how they reach their students. I have a second eighth grade science teacher in my building who I get along with extremely well, and she has a little bit more experience. She's just been working a little bit longer. And she also has a slightly different perspective from me, so we are able to complement each other by kind of a give and take on creation of lessons and whatnot. We're one of the few departments in our building that stays on topic throughout the entire year. If you're going my class and you go in her class, we're teaching the same thing, slightly different because we're different humans, but the same ideas are getting across. As far as the next one, technological literacy, I think this one's really important. I would give myself, once again, kind of middle of the road. There's always room for improvement here. We have really little control over the LMS systems we have in our district. Our district is a Google Suite subscriber, and we also use Moodle. As far as Google goes, it's I don't think it's robust enough yet, Google Classroom, to be on its own. So we have to complement that with something else. And our district has gone with Moodle because of the freeware aspect of it. However, Moodle has a good foundation, but as far as other options out there, I don't know why we haven't pursued some other ones, such as Schoology, even though I do know there is a cost involved there. So this kind of goes back to my echo chamber comment in Module 1. Do we know the best practice? Or how often are we testing the waters? And I think that comes down to the teachers too. So like I said, I give myself kind of a middle of the road there, because you don't know what you don't know. A growth disposition. This is another one that I think is really important, and I think I kind of meet in my classroom. So allowing the risks and failures. Not all school systems look at failure as learning, or at least they kind of on the surface they do. However, when you get down to it, if a student doesn't have X grade, then that creates an issue. So I think students need to have the right to pass or fail, and I let them know that. That can be due to their decisions, their work ethic, whatever it may be. And I will do everything in my power to help them to pass my class and to be successful, but they also have to help themselves. So there has to be a growth aspect for them. This can get some questionable looks from my parents and admin sometimes. However, when it finally clicks and you see that light bulb moment for these kiddos, they have a higher appreciation for what they've been able to pull off instead of having it kind of spoon-fed to them. The last one here, I have emphasis on life skills. One of the quotes I have up on my board, which I really do follow, it's a day without learning is a day wasted, which I think is actually a changed up of a Charlie Chaplin quote, a day without laughing is a day wasted. But I stress to my students they should make pursuits to better themselves in some way every day. We're not always going to meet that mark. In all honesty, it's kind of infrequent sometimes. However, we should be trying to do that. Learn something. Get something out of the day that you didn't know. Make sure you feel like you're a better person in some way. I want my students to understand that school is about a process and not necessarily getting those raw facts. I have there, it may help on Jeopardy. Yeah, sure. Remember me when you win all your money. But as far as that goes, it's, the idea of learning. When my students ask me, when are we going to need to know this? And my answer is usually, well, it's the process of taking in this information and kind of assimilating it and using it is what you're really going to use this for. So, learning about the atomic number of certain elements isn't necessarily the fact here that we need to pull away, but how did you get there? I also like to focus on group work for my students, because many professions require individuals to work in groups for problem solving. You're usually in a team in some form. As teachers, we're always working in teams, people in business. So I think this is another one that I kind of meet in my classroom, but I find it really important. For local constraints, I think the biggest thing that we have looming overhead now with the COVID issue, we'll see what kind of comes out of this, but the PSSA testing, we have no control over this behemoth of a test. There's nothing we can do about it. And it creates a sense of teaching to the test. I think it forces our pacing, and it kind of gets rid of the thrill of exploration in education. We kind of pigeonhole the kids, and you have to know this because on this date you're going to be tested on it, and that kind of constrains our ability to look into this stuff in more detail. And lastly, adaptations for students with specific learning disabilities. I teach in a heterogeneously grouped class, so I have students in all ability levels, which is wonderful, but it does make a struggle for online ed. And in my district, my building, we have one teacher that's specifically 8th grade and then one that's split to help with learning support. And this becomes a staffing issue. How do we get all those students the support they need when we don't have the staff to help adapt tests, adapt assignments, kind of walk through with the kids? So I think those are some constraints that we, with the blended learning system, that can show up and kind of derail some of the important aspects that you're trying to set up. All right, thank you for listening, and I look forward to working with you guys for the rest of this course.